So it's come to my attention that 75% of the people who watch my videos don't actually follow me. That's like if three-fourths of the food you cooked you didn't get to eat. And I'm starving over here. If you like one of my videos, chances are you're going to like all of them. So go ahead and hit that subscribe button, baby. Who is Tsunade's child? I mean, shit, for that matter, who is Jiraiya's? I mean, the way that man lived his life, God knows there's a couple of them running around out there. But that's not the point of this video. Today we're talking Tsunade. Most importantly, because of all of the people in Naruto, she is the last full-blooded Senju that we know of. Senju blood is very important for a multitude of reasons that I am very willing to cover right now. Essentially, we know Tsunade is Hashirama's granddaughter. It's covered extensively all the way from when she casually mentions it to the whole couple of episodes about how her necklace was passed down from Hashirama and it's worth an entire mine of money. And because Tsunade is Hashirama's granddaughter, she got his incredible regenerative abilities. I mean, she also got his crippling gambling addiction, but that's neither here nor there. On top of his regenerative abilities and his gambling addiction, she also got his massive reserves of chakra. What she didn't get was his wood style. And that's because wood style isn't Senju clan specific. It was actually only specific to Hashirama and, well now, Moegi. So massive regenerative ability and massive amounts of chakra seems like something you would want to pass along to further generations, right? So you can understand why there's a lot of theories about who Tsunade's child is, because we want her genes to keep going throughout the generation. On top of that, there's another theory about the four original bloodlines coming back together, that being the Uchiha, the Senju, the Uzumaki, and the Hyuga, in order to create another Otsutsuki, or at the very least, an incredibly powerful child. And if we have no Senjus to pull those bloodlines from, then we can no longer get that child. So fans have been clamoring to find out if Tsunade gave us the possibility to get those four bloodlines reconnected. Essentially, there's two theories about who Tsunade's child could be. It's either Minato or Yamato. We'll start with Yamato because Minato is arguably the more compelling of the two options. Yamato, whose real name is Tenzo, was an orphan who was raised in the Root and then joined the Anbu. The most compelling argument for as to why he would be Tsunade's son is actually a fairly simple one. For literal generations, Orochimaru attempted to bind the Hashirama cell to a child or just a host in general in order to recreate a wood user. This is because a wood user is incredibly powerful. Their ability to seal tailed beast energy makes them an indispensable asset to anyone, anywhere. The people who a wood user would have been the most indispensable to, however, though, is the Akatsuki, who are trying to round up all the tailed beasts. And who better to round up all the tailed beasts than a wood user? Hashirama literally did it and then handed them out like they were candy to opposing villages to promote peace. In this process, Orochimaru kills 70 people. The cell binds to absolutely no one, except Yamato. But why Yamato? Why Tenzo? It's not like he comes from a special bloodline or anything like that. He is simply an orphan. But who he's an orphan of could lead us to the answer of that question. Because imagine if he is even simply half Senju, aka the child of Tsunade and some random other person. That would increase his chances of being able to bind to the Hashirama cell exponentially. Who better to bind to Hashirama's cells than someone who carries a small amount of Hashirama's DNA already? And you're probably saying,
well, Nick, how would that happen? Tsunade would just keep Yamato around. She wouldn't abandon him.
And if you're talking about the Tsunade that we know from Naruto, then you're probably not wrong. I mean, she's a good person, although she does have her moments of being a not so great person. But we're talking about Tsunade after the Second Great Ninja War. After losing her loved one, Dan, after losing her brother. This was a broken woman who was traveling the countryside gambling anything she could get her hands on. And imagine a woman in the throes of depression looking to continue gambling has something that Orochimaru would find incredibly valuable: a half Senju child. This could also explain why Tsunade assigned Yamato to Naruto's squad so that someone that she loved could keep an eye on someone she also loved. Yamato keeping an eye on Naruto, that is, keeping all of her close ones together. It's a pretty far out there theory, I'll have to admit, which is why I actually prefer the second theory, the Minato theory. The Minato theory, I'd say, actually has better legs than the Yamato theory. It's predicated on a couple of points, the most important of which being Minato's hair color. And you're probably saying,
well, there's tons of blondes in Naruto.
and yes, there is. There's like 6 of them at least. But if you look at Tsunade and Minato's hair colors, it's almost identical. And then think for a second that Minato Namikaze was able to use flying Raijin and Rasenguns to incredibly chakra depletive jutsus over and over and over again. And yet he comes from some nowhere clan like the Namikazes. He is the only Namikaze we know of because they are a backwater clan with no acclaimed people. So wouldn't it make more sense if that massive amount of chakra he needed to have came from Senju bloodlines? Then take into effect the fact that he is a perfect sage, and one of the 3 perfect sages we see in Naruto. One being Naruto, one being Minato, and one being Hashirama. If Hashirama is Minato's great-grandfather, then it would make sense that all these perfect sages were related. So why did Tsunade abandon Minato? Well, for a similar reason that she would have abandoned Yamato, except in this circumstance, Yamato is the child of Dan and Tsunade. If you look at Dan Kato, Tsunade's dead boyfriend now, you'll see that Minato looks almost exactly like him, except with blonde hair and styled different, obviously. Except after the Second Great Ninja War, pregnant with Dan's child, she begins to roam the countryside. And when she gives birth in a remote village, decides that she isn't suited to raise this child and gives it over to the remote clan of the Namikazes. This is why Naruto calls her Granny and why she never fights it. Sure, you can say that Naruto calls her Granny because she's old, and that's not inaccurate because she reveals to him that she looks younger than she is using a jutsu, but the fact that she never fights him calling her Granny when she's sensitive about her age and her looks to everyone else points you in a direction that's a kinda suspicious. But the most important point of all of this is the point we talked about in the beginning, the recombination of the 4 great original bloodlines. For the 4 great original bloodlines to come back together, essentially Boruto and Sarada would have to have a child. In this circumstance, Minato being the child of Tsunade, Boruto would bring the Uzumaki, the Senju, and the Hyuga bloodlines, and Sarada would bring the Uchiha bloodlines. However, if Tsunade is not Minato's mother, these 2 having a child leaves 1 bloodline out, and it also extincts the Senju. The only caveat or explanation you could have without Minato being the child of Tsunade is that the Uzumakis are closely related enough to the Senjus that it still counts as the 4 bloodlines combining. But this theory is a lot more fun. But hey, who knows who Tsunade's real kid is? She sure as hell hasn't told us. Kishimoto hasn't told us, so you might as well take my word for it. And if you guys like taking my words for things, go ahead and like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell, because we're posting 3 times a week out here, and it's all anime all the time, baby. I'm not saying Tsunade gambled the child away, but it makes for a more interesting storyline now, doesn't it?